Johnny slurped a chocolate malt milkshake. Mark could smell the rich cream and fudge. His stomach clenched. He would have loved a taste. Yeah, if he did, as soon as the milkshake hit his stomach, he'd be hitting the toilet. He sighed. Sometimes timelessness wasn't worth missing out on the simple joys. He glanced at his half-finished glass of water. Johnny was oblivious to Mark's staring. Or maybe he thought Mark was hungry for blood and chose to ignore him. He did that sometimes. Ignore Mark whenever he stared at a nearby woman's neck. All part of the day-to-day when living with a vampire.
So, I've started playing basketball.
Mark sputtered and almost choked on his water.
Joined a small club and we play every Thursday night. It's been good. Gets me out socializing. Season's over now.
Would have liked to seen you play. I've missed out on a lot. I've been so wrapped up in what happened with the society that I've ignored you. What's been happening the last few years? Did you finish your degree?
That and then some. I've been working as I've always wanted. Got into a stockbrokering company. Those summer internships paid off. I know you left money for me and I've used some of it, but I want to stand on my own 2 feet. Move out soon.
All grown up, right?
Don't you know it? Besides, there's a girl I like. So there's that.
Got it. How long you two been dating?
A few months. But it's a little more serious than some of the others.
Others? Wait. I forget how old you are now.
I'm almost the same age as when you turned.
Laughing and reminiscing on old times, they didn't notice when 2 people approached their table. Mark would have known their faces anywhere. They've aged since college, but their style didn't change. Kyle and Nate stood next to their booth. Mark stiffened. What were they going to say? They looked out of place. Although it was July, they were wearing long-sleeve light shirts. Mark noticed the bandages hidden beneath Nate's collar.
So it is true. You're alive.
Any reason why I shouldn't be?
We heard the rest of the society died in a fire. Strange how you made it out. You finally fed up with them?
Are you suggesting I killed them?
Grabbing Mark's arm, Johnny shook his head. They didn't need to fight in the old diner.
He ain't worth it.
By the looks of you two, you're still sticking around Damien. You're still not quite like him, are you? Are you hanging on hoping to change? Is that why you let him hurt your brother that way?
Pointing to the bandages, Mark knew he struck a nerve when Kyle narrowed his eyes. There was only anger. Nate tugged at his sleeves. A softness came to Mark's eyes. They were once his college friends. He wished things were like they were, before vampires changed everything.
Are you two okay?
Mark wasn't stupid. Those wraps and long sleeves told him they were still donors. All this time they donated their blood and they were never given the choice to become a vampire. They were being strung along. Mark knew them well enough. Nate especially would have leaped at the opportunity.
We're fine.
Is he still human? Don't you think he should be like you?
Are you feeding off him too?
We're in public, guys.
Shut your mouth. He never hurt me. I trust him.
For how long? The vampire side always wins.
He has more heart than you two. He respects me, and I choose to be who I am. I'm not some salty extra wannabe.
Don't want to hear that from someone who wets himself in front of vamps.
Stop it! Don't you two have somewhere to be?
Yes, I think we do.
Curled up on the couch, Mark read Sir Garnier's diary. His fingers traced the Middle French calligraphy's harsh lines and expressive T's. Mark kept his nose to the old parchment and lost track of the time even when the sun sank. Johnny asked what Mark learned.
He led a very dark life. He was so much like me, convinced that vampirism risks the soul. Great. If my ancestor thought this, my whole theory could be right. In here he talked about his former life, his love for a girl, and his horse. He wrote about strategy, fighting, and jousting techniques. Professor would have found all of that fascinating. This is funny. He even complains about how ridiculous court dress is. I would have liked to meet him.
Mark thought about returning human. There'd be no more awesome sceneries of nighttime fields of Colorado wildfires and mountainsides. Mark realized that only he could see the awesome scenery. If he became human again, he'd miss the experience. No super hearing or light sensitivity. Just a plain, normal existence.
Are you sure about this? Aren't you deciding a little too quickly? Like the time you chose to be a vampire?
The brat had to remind Mark. Mark's mouth twitched.
Kid, I want to be human more than anything else.
I'm no longer a kid. Before you know it, I'll have a wife, picket fence, dog, and little kids running around.
No, you're not a kid anymore. I know you want the family you never had. But don't rush it. I'm still not used to it. I woke up and the next moment you're older by a few years. You're old enough to drink alcohol now, right? I'll get us some wine.
As long as it isn't the vampire kind.
What? You don't want blood?
At least I'm not an old man after you hibernated. That'd be freaky. Go to sleep one day and boom, I'm an old man wearing dentures. I'm worried about the baptism. You will save your soul, but couldn't you die from suddenly being human? I finally get to see you again after a few years of you being smushed inside that couch. You could be gone forever this time.
The kid was quick. It felt as if everyone was plotting against Mark with the best intentions.
My soul's more important. Sure, it's a possibility, but I don't think I'll die. I'm gonna have faith that I won't. Besides, saving your soul trumps losing it any day.
You're my friend. I'll support whatever choice you make. While you were gone, I've done a lot of thinking. Made friends, even played some basketball. I thought about someday getting married and having kids. The whole time you've known me, you've treated me okay. I know my childhood wasn't the best, but I know I could trust you around my future family, whether as Uncle Mark the human or Uncle Mark the vampire.
As Mark's face crunched, Johnny's expression turned pensive. He glanced at the muted television. As always, it was tuned for the nightly business report. He took a sip of wine.
I'm glad you never made me a vampire, Mark.
Me too, man. Me too.
Yawning, Johnny padded to his room. A few hours passed as Mark continued to read the old journal. The yellowed parchment smelled of dust and age. He thought the professor would have kept this piece of history forever. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. A sinking feeling came over Mark. There, on the other side, were Nate and Kyle. It was too convenient. They whispered, assuring each other on the other side of the door. Mark didn't think that their words were meant to be heard, but his vampire hearing picked up the words anyway. A slow vampire's heart thumped on the other side. It wasn't coming from either Nate nor Kyle. Slowly, Mark opened the door. Damien, quicker than a human can blink, stepped from around the corner and into the doorway.
I wanted to stop by and say hi. Check up on you. Well, this is a little awkward. I mean, I didn't like your mentor. He was a prick. That control freak trained you nonstop and wouldn't let us be friends. But that didn't mean he should have died. No, that didn't come out right. If you need a permanent place to stay, you're always welcome with us. All the vampires are wanting to fill the Enforcer's shoes a little too soon. You don't have to succeed him. You have no obligations to him. He's dead.
The biting words made Mark flinch.
Think about it. You're free now. Why don't you come with us? You can live a better life with the Skulls. Who do you have left in the society? That old man Belmonte and Charlie? And Charlie will be too busy with his friends to hang out with you. Did you ever truly feel they were family? Yeah, they mentored you better than how that loner Ricky mentored me. But now you're used to being a vampire. So they started you off right into the vampire life. But that doesn't mean you owe them eternity or anything. Bonds like that don't last forever. Don't let them tie you down.
Does Jinzu know you're here?
Well, I told her I was stopping by to give my condolences. Sorry I didn't go to the funeral. I really didn't want to see the local vampire crowd after your introduction. Bunch of snooty know-it-alls.
I think being a vampire is wrong.
What was that? Don't be depressed. You have the chance to be free. Why would you be thinking that?
I made a mistake. This isn't the place to talk about this.
A small gasp came from the hallway. Mark closed his eyes. Why did his adopted son have to accidentally hear vampire business every time? During his hesitation, Damien ran to the other side of the room, grabbing Johnny from behind while glaring at Mark. Damien's fangs grazed Johnny's neck. Johnny winced and looked at Mark with fear in his eyes.
Bastard, what's the meaning of this? We stopped by to surprise you, but it seems that we're the ones getting surprises tonight. Why is he still human?
The twins each grabbed Mark's arms. This was going to be trouble.
Johnny, as soon as I run, get out of here.
He wasn't going to let them hurt his friend, the only human who'd freely accepted and trusted him. Shrugging the twins off, Mark ran towards Damien, tackling him off Johnny.
No way! I'm not gonna leave you here with that jerk!
Stupid. He should have run. The twins quickly grabbed him. The House of Skulls leader darkly chuckled.
Looks like the little human still has a grudge against me. Maybe if I make him one of us, he'll change his mind.
Mark threw a punch, and they struggled.
As long as I live, I'll kill you if you try.
He glanced and nodded at someone hiding behind. Mark wanted to turn, to grab Johnny and run, but it was too late. Before he could block, something struck the back of Mark's head. He fell towards the tile floor, and everything turned dark as he heard Johnny's voice calling him. A clinking echoed back to Mark as he adjusted himself. Even with his vampiric sight, it was too dark. Was he blind? Was he dead? Okay, not dead, but definitely trapped. Never had Mark felt true fear before. It is the type of feeling that makes someone too afraid to move. He'd woken to this dark place, the back of his head sticky, throbbing with a dull pain. His usually cold body felt freezing. His throat ached. It was dry. Didn't he drink not too long ago? When Mark tried to move, he was jerked back by metal shackles that rubbed against his wrists. A cold wetness flowed down his fingers, and the smell of rotten blood assaulted his nose. His bruised wrists were bleeding. Someone had cut him. He kicked out his feet, but they were lashed to his chair. Mark tried to flip the chair, but it was bolted down. The scraping of chains slapped against wood as he kicked against them. The chain sounds reverberated in what seemed like a very small space. The last thing Mark remembered was Damien's unexpected visit. Where was that jerk? And where did he take Johnny?
Help! Is anyone out there? Can anybody hear me?
Through dry lips, Mark choked out the words, shouting them again and again. There was no answer. A terrible thought crossed his mind. Had Damien buried him alive Was he left in a room to be forgotten forever? A tremor cascaded down his body. He stilled for a moment and just listened. It was eerily quiet. He could only hear his sluggish vampire heart slowly beating. It began to beat faster as he panicked. He was trapped. Alone. What should he do? Should he just hibernate? He was thankful the professor taught him how. If he was left in this place to suffer, it'd be the easiest way to survive. If he'd been left to rot, that would be the best choice. But if he slept, he wouldn't be able to hear any nearby help. And if someone was to eventually find him, and they were human, he probably wouldn't be able to contain his bloodlust. He waited alone in the darkness. Was anybody at all nearby? He didn't want to be alone, and a thought nagged at him. Through a scratched throat, he prayed the first prayer since he could remember.
Please, God, be with Johnny!
His thirst became stronger.
Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Hey guys, sounds like he's finally awake.
Scraping the floor, a heavy door was dragged open, revealing a slice of light that cut through the dark prison. Mark squinted and saw Damien standing in the doorway. He flipped on a light switch and stepped inside. The blinking fluorescent light hurt Mark's eyes, and it took a few seconds for it to stop pulsating. When it finally did, he saw that he was trapped in a black painted room. He heard a distant door opening and heavy boots running down what sounded like stairs. Zhenshu paused in the doorway with widened eyes.
Get out of here. You're not supposed to be down here. I told you that.
But Damien, it isn't right what you're doing to Mark. Just explain to him what's going on, how you feel. You don't need to torture him.
She looked down at his sore limbs. Gashes had been sliced into his arms and blood stained the floor. Had Mark been human? He'd been dead from the blood loss. Damien turned and glared at her. Zhenshu quietly crept up the stairwell. Damien turned his attention to Mark. Kneeling in front of him, he spoke with a crooked smile.
You're thirsty, aren't you?
Very. How long have I been out?
3 days.
Did you do this? Just tell me why.
Why wouldn't I? Johnny's not a vampire or a donor. It's time you made a choice with him. I think that you need to be reminded how good it feels to be a vampire. To be really alive. To drink from someone in bloodlust. To be a vampire. To lose yourself in the moment. Maybe that'll help you turn him.
You're crazy.
Mark wanted to spit at him, but he had no saliva left.
One more thing. I heard an interesting rumor. You'd been asking around about how to become a human. That was just a joke, right?
Mark hesitated. Damien grabbed his collar.
That was just a joke, right? Answer me!
It's true. I'm going to be baptized. I'll be human again.
A slow building anger grew on Damien's face. His outlined eyes turned to slits.
Even knowing you're one of the most powerful beings on the planet, even knowing how great our life is, you'd rather be a weak loser. Pathetic.
He had a superiority complex over mankind. He sneered as he slammed Mark into a wall.
You had everything. A father who actually cared. A rich vampire family. A life as you wanted it. You spoiled prick. Now that the professor is gone, you're free. No blood ties to limit you. But no, you want to use your freedom to throw everything away. I won't let you make that mistake.
Did you kill Professor Mickelson?
Why do you care? All you want to be is human.
He released hold of him. Mark slumped into the chair.
Hey, twins! Come down here.
A human's quick heartbeat and scent assaulted Mark's nose. He threw himself against his chair, trying to separate himself from the man in the doorway. Too close. A light peeked from the stairwell. With it came the scent of Nate's blood. Mark knew that the 30-year-old had given his blood earlier to one of the skulls. The tangs of blood whet his appetite. The scent made him thirstier, if that was even possible. There was a certain listlessness to them. They seemed passive to the world, to Mark and Johnny's situation. These were not the same friends. They just followed orders. Mark was afraid.
Where's Johnny? What did you do to him?
He's here with us. We haven't bit him. Yet. That's your job.
I won't bite my friends.
I won't bite my friends.
Bring in the prisoner.
I think you should turn him.
He knew then that his friends were lost. Without a word, Mark's former college neighbours left the room and returned, dragging Johnny into the room. Johnny was bruised, and he furiously looked at Damien before his eyes met Mark's. He gasped.
Mark, your eyes.
There was a look of pity on his face. Mark couldn't understand why he was looking at him like that when he was pale and obviously suffering. He barely stood with the rope burns on his wrists and bruised limbs. Mark didn't want to think what had happened to him over the last few days. But Johnny was still alive, still a human. His heartbeat told Mark so. Meanwhile, Damien watched him as Mark grimaced and turned his face away.
Get lost, Damien.
Our guest isn't thirsty enough.
Pulling out a long knife from one of his cargo pant pockets, Damien made 2 more gashes on Mark's arms.
Is this how you treat your guests? I'd hate to be your friend.
Come on. I'm helping you. You will start acting like a vampire. Make a choice with the brat. Drink him or change him.
I refuse.
You damn hypocrite. As enforcer, you're supposed to keep the code, not break it.
I thought you hated rules.
But this is a rule even I understand. Make him a vampire or suck him dry. Do it. Because the way it is, neither of you will leave here alive until it's done.
He pushed Johnny towards Mark. His quick pulse was running through his delicious veins. Mark's body leaned forward slowly as he was mesmerized by the throbbing sound. Johnny gasped right as Mark's lips were an inch from his throat. Somehow, Mark stopped himself and slammed himself backwards. Johnny's breath quickened and his heartbeat sped. Mark struggled. He wouldn't hurt his friend. Mark shook his head. Damien backhanded him.
You need to remember what it means to be a vampire. You don't need this fake compassion. Bite him!
Mark turned his head away and spit blood. With a glare, Damien tore Johnny's collar and revealed his throat.
Fine then. If you're not thirsty, then I'll drink.
He pressed his teeth against Johnny's neck. Johnny yelled.
Stop it! Get your hands off him!
Will you drink his blood?
No! You know I won't!
Then why should I stop?
With a teasing grin, he deeply bit Johnny. Keeping his dark-lined eyes on Mark, he sloppily sucked on Johnny's neck, but let the rest of the blood spill.
The blood's tempting, isn't it?
Mark closed his eyes.
Go away.
What's the matter? It's okay to want to drink. It's what being a vampire is all about.
A dark fury rose somewhere deep inside Mark. Lunging, he aimed for Damien's face. He wanted to rip it apart, but the binds pulled back. Mark wanted to give him pain. He wanted to show him what an enforcer's apprentice could do. However, anger did no good. Mark fought, struggled, but couldn't break free. He could only watch. Johnny's blood dripped only inches away. Mark swallowed. He felt his own rotten blood leaking down his arms. Damien pushed the kid towards Mark. The fresh sanguine smell alone was enough for him to lose himself. He jerked, fighting the chains. Blinking, he tried to think of something, anything other than the metallic smell of blood. Jody at her easel, the professor's last lecture, Charlie playing the piano. Mark heaved in breaths, trembled. Eventually, all he saw in the room was himself, the human and the blood. Sweet blood. It was there, flowing just for him. He could drink it. His fangs lengthened, the sharp tips pressing against the insides of his lips. Yanking the chains, he began to fight his bonds. Mark groaned, his scratched throat streamed with dryness. A pain rippled through his body and tore at his stomach. He needed blood. Now.
Johnny, go away. I'm starting to have bloodlust.
Stop this! He can't take much more.
Once he's satisfied, he'll wake up. If he really is so attached to you, he'll want his pet to live. He can't stand the thought of you dying. You'll become his tyro. Then, he'll be one of us. If he doesn't kill you in the process.
Raw pain gnawed at Mark. Blood would fix that. Suddenly, a sorrowful expression crossed the human's face. Why did he look that way? There was a deep growl, and Mark's head started left to right to see who made it. The sound came from him. His lips had risen, and he'd fully exposed his teeth. He was an animal. Mark closed his eyes and shook his head.
Promised. I made a promise to him. I won't bite him.
He slowly returned to sanity. With every bit of strength he had, he sat straight and turned his head away from the flowing blood. The blood that would heal him. The blood that smelled so right, so good. Something inside him told him it was completely wrong to bite this person. Johnny was his name. The kid he'd once saved. His friend who had saved him in return.
He's still not gonna bite. Can't imagine what he's feeling right now.
He's crazy. We'll try this again later. By then, he'll have no choice.
Suddenly, Johnny headbutted Damien and then kicked Kyle. Pushing Nate, he ran up the stairs. Mark saw him go, but then in a flash, Damien caught him. Johnny had no chance. Mark heard Johnny fall down the stairs, followed by the sounds of Damien beating him up.
Try and piss me off again and I'll force you to become a vamp myself.
The twins followed upstairs. Even though he was weak, Mark could still hear Damien's voice through the steel door. Johnny called out for Mark and started to swear at Damien. How long would Damien keep them alive? A bolt lock fell into place. They left Mark alone in the dark.
Dumb things on street. So many dumb things on street.